Beep boop bop boop. Beep boop bop boop boop. This is for sinking because I've already messed up. And it works. It sounds like some witchcraft or some wizardry. And it's in a castle. It's like Hogwarts. It's the alcoholics Hogwarts. But it works. It's I'm telling you, it works. Trust me. Look me into my eyes. It works. What is new? Nothing really. Had a family reunion last weekend. Immensely positive. This weekend I've got some fun things planned in Asheville and in Charlotte, North Carolina. So looking forward to going out and experiencing some new things. Going to another Panthers game though. The last one I went to, we lost. So hopefully by the time you're viewing this, the Panthers have kind of gotten back on track, because there's the Sam Darnold. One of my buddies, Vince, he said that there was a nickname that had been given to Sam Darnold. It's Sam Darnold. He struggled with the Jets underneath Adam Gase. He's struggling with the Panthers now, but he hurt himself. And I saw something online that was like, it gave an update on Sam Darnold's injury, and it said it was an incomplete fracture of the shoulder or something like that. I don't even know how you fracture a shoulder, so I'm assuming it was like tear of the shoulder or something. And someone commented on it and said, "Man, this dude can't even complete a full injury." I can't get right. I can't get right. Had to change the battery, then realized I wasn't recording, so here we are again. I'm gonna get right. Mr. Can't Get Right's gonna get right eventually. So going back to what I was talking about, what feels like eons ago in real time, but obviously I'm going to do some doctoring here and make it look like it's smooth. And I'm just some suave character. That's what the editing does for me. This is why I can't do podcasts live. There's no way I could do it live, because I just get completely off track and forget to put in new batteries or forget to press record. It's just, you think you get good at this or are getting good at this, and then it proves not to be true. Humbling experience, this. I hopped on the train. I saw that the movie was coming out. I've had this book on my shelf for months. It's been something that, when you think about sci-fi or fantasy novels, this book, Dune by Frank Herbert, always comes up. And I had just failed to get around to it until, I don't know what hole I've been in, but I just realized the movie came out, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I said, I have to read the book before I watch the movie. And so I did. Disclaimer, if you are the type of person that I am and do stuff like that, know that the movie only covers book 1 of this, which is about 350 pages, book 1. The book 2 portion isn't released until 2023. I'm not even sure if they're shooting at this point. But I was wanting to do a podcast on the book in the movie and how the movie held true to or diverged from the book. And then some common themes within the book, like I always do. So I wanted to add a little bit of a wrinkle. And of course, there's going to be bourbon involved. There always is. This one's Yellowstone Select. This one's also out of Kentucky. It's a 93 proof, so pretty low level. It's on the Basil Hayden level of the proofing. So we'll see if I like it more than Basil Hayden. I'm going to throw up a list of the rankings here just to get everyone back on the same sheet of music. Basil Hayden, I know, ranked pretty low. Not 1792 low. And I had originally thought that Basil Hayden was one of my favorites. So this is always a fun experience. I'm glad you guys are back with me. I'm glad you're watching. And let's get right into it. So, starting off with the book, it takes a while to get off the ground for me. If you see the earmarks in the book, which I'll show you here in a bit, book 1 has about 7 or 8 earmarks. Book 2, probably 3 times as many. It just, the way Frank Herbert is able to accelerate the plot rapidly and in a way that's got all this. I mean, it's an epic. This is a 900-page book, plus all these appendices that they've got, and afterwards with Frank Herbert's son. I think it's Brian Herbert. He did the afterword. It's a long book, and it's really artfully done. I'll get into the movie in a bit. I think I'll give you right off the rip. I think the movie did an amazing job, did the book solid justice. I hate that I have to wait 2 years for the next movie. If you haven't seen the first movie or you haven't read the book, I think it's important, no matter how you feel about sci-fi, I think it's important to read some of these classics because it colors everything beyond it, and everyone's kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, and the giants are these original writers of sci-fi, these trailblazers. But one thing I wanted to note is that it starts off slow, but even throughout the book, you can tell that Frank Herbert is brilliant. And so we'll dive right in. He says a world is supported by 4 things: the learning of the wise, the justice of the great, the prayers of the righteous, and the valor of the brave. Now, I don't think I'm quite wise yet. I know I'm not great, and I know I'm not righteous, but I would say that I'm a pretty brave person. So I thought it was important to note that this is something that I was thinking about. I was like, wow, I don't think that I'm wise or great, and I definitely don't think I'm righteous. And last podcast, I led off with a speech by Matthew McConaughey, and he said he's always chasing the guy 10 years ahead of him. And many people had seen this video before. I threw it up on my last one, and I think it's always important to have something to chase. And when I read that page, or that quote in the book, I remember thinking, oh, well, this is something to chase. If the world requires these 4 types of people, why could I not strive to encompass all 4 of those types of people within myself? And it's always a cool litmus test when you start thinking about things as you're reading. And one thing this podcast has forced me to do is that instead of just tacitly receiving the book and kind of just reading for pleasure and then moving on with my life, what's cool about this podcast is it forces me to kind of sit and reflect. It does take longer to read through some of these books, but it's worth it, I think. And so you get to sit down and think about things and type up these notes and write out these thoughts while you're reading. And I think there's a lot of utility in that. And so reading that kind of gave me a good idea as to things to pursue. Later on in book 1, Leto Atreides is a duke on a planet that's been tasked to go to Dune, the title of the entire book. And he already knows that he's being set up for a trap by the Emperor, and he's having a conversation with his son, Paul. Paul's the main character in this movie and in the book. Everything kind of circles around him. And right now he's still kind of finding himself very early in this novel, and they're about to make this move to this new planet. And I guess Paul was asking his dad about, what does it take to motivate people to follow you? You're a leader of an entire house, a royal man, and you command such respect and loyalty from your men. How do you do it? And his dad says, there are proven ways. Play on the certain knowledge of their superiority, the mystique of their secret covenant, and the spirit, or esprit, or I think he uses the French term esprit, like esprit de corps, which is kind of salient throughout modern military, at least the United States modern military. So the esprit of shared suffering. He says it can be done, and it has been done in many worlds and in many times. It's if you play to their their ego, or you play to their brotherhood, or you play to when he says the mystique of the covenant, I almost feel like he's talking like the almost religious drive to doing whatever they're doing, whatever their mission is. It's got some sort of destiny feeling to it. And actually, this whole book and the whole movie kind of mirrors that sentiment, that there's certainly some destiny. And I always like thinking about this cyclical argument of, are things predestined, or do we have free will? And that's been a topic of discussion when I've had a drink or two with many a friend. So enjoyed that part. And I enjoyed the thought that brought with that discussion between father and son. And I actually want to bring up the dynamic of father and son. You guys have all, if you're watching this one, you probably watched my podcast with my dad 3 or 4 podcasts ago. And I think you guys can see why he's an admirable figure in anyone's life. He's smart. He's been driven his whole life. And in the book, it says there's probably no more terrible enlightenment than when you realize that your father's mortal. He's merely flesh and blood. And I thought, terrible enlightenment? Why? My journey with my dad, him moving from this giant, this admirable figure, to my dad, a man, has been like a really beautiful experience. And in fact, there was another book that I read a while back. It was a biography of Robin Williams, one of my favorite comedians and actors. And he was talking about just the beauty of that relationship change as a son grows to be a man. Just that bond between his father and him. And I agreed with that completely. And this was just a weird aside that I read in book 1. So the common themes so far is that everyone has a role, but people can always pursue to serve multiple roles to make the world a better place. If you're righteous or just or brave, you can always seek to have those other things, the wisdom and the kindness. And I think I've talked about this. I've hit on this in the past, so bear with me. And then the second theme is inspiring other people. It can be complicated in practice, but in reality, like, there are very simple ways to go about inspiring people to follow you. And and it's not even just to follow you, because it's not like you're trying to compel people to do things or coerce them. You're trying to inspire them. So that's the second theme, is inspiration. And then the third theme is the beauty of the father-son relationship as that giant becomes merely a man. And I don't know, that's how I feel about that. The fourth predominant thread was, I think, it intentionally kind of woven into the plot line through the Harkonnens, which are the prior ruling class on Dune before the Atreides clan moves in. And they're not purely evil, but man, there's a lot of evil to them. And Paul, having grown a bit and beginning to fill into his role as the Duke incumbent, starts looking at society, and he starts looking at the people there on Arrakis or Dune. And the reason it's so important of a place is it provides this drug that grants special powers to the navigators, or the Guild of Navigators, and those are the people that traverse the entire universe. So it kind of drives trade. It drives movement of basically everyone between worlds. And this is the only planet you can find it on. So it's an immensely rich planet in these resources. And he says they were cheap masks locked on festering thoughts, voices grabbing to drown out the loud silence in every beast. And that's, I feel like, just a very poetic way of saying these elites that were there on Arrakis still, the guild members, the businessmen, the remnants from the Harkonnen tribe, they put on what they feel is a good face for public. And Paul is just disgusted by it. When you use words like festering thoughts, you kind of get the idea that he's maybe not a huge fan of these people, and I get it. And I see that actually even in everyday life here with online dating and even relationships in a bureaucratic system like the military. And I see it in that, people want to play their part or portray themselves as someone that they're not because that's what they think people will respond to in a positive light, which I think is bullshit, right? So I try to be pretty, and it gets me in trouble at times, but I try to be pretty authentic. And I feel Paul when he said this, and it was a kind of a stuffy phrase, and there are stuffy phrases in this book throughout, but you get the picture with what Mr. Herbert's trying to say through Paul. Moving on, the fourth principle was like just being authentic, or I guess it was more of a diatribe against being inauthentic and trying to portray oneself as someone that you're not. Huge fan of being authentic. I think Paul Atreides is as well. So the fifth one is the women, how the female characters are portrayed in this book. And I'm not trying to win any points, but man, the strongest class of women, it's called the Bene Gesserit. And they're just like these supremely intelligent, strong women, but they're reduced to like this cold, calculating manner. And I don't want to give off too much about what they do, but they're cold and calculating. They're brutal in ways, and they're insidious in that they're placed throughout this entire universe and this entire book in positions of where they're close to powerful men. And these women, I think it's cool the dynamic, but at the same time, the underlying currents of a woman can only be powerful when she's cold and calculating and insidious and a little bit, I guess, sly. And sly and cunning kind of has a connotation that's positive, and I don't know if that's what the intention was in this book, but I'm a big fan of like female characters that are just strong because they're strong. So when they kind of dehumanized the strongest women in this, I was kind of against that. Now there are some, I think, that are going to come out in book 2 in the movie in 2023, the follow-up to this one, where you're going to meet a character where it's not so much like that. She's still just as strong as the Bene Gesserit, but she's her own person, and she kind of revolves around Paul, the main character. So I don't know, take that as you may. And as an aside, actually, I wanted to talk about, because I wanted to revisit the father-son thing, because in an afterword, Brian Herbert, the author's son, says that Frank Herbert spent more time with Paul Atreides, or Atreides, the main character in his book, than he did with his actual sons. And I think he had 3 sons growing up in a household where their father wouldn't allow him into his study because they might mess up his stuff. And I thought to myself, like, this isn't the first time that I've heard about truly interesting and powerful people that were terrible at relationships. And being a person that wants both, I wonder if that's possible to like achieve true greatness and maintain a fully functional, very healthy relationship. And that's something I've always thought about. And if you've got similar thoughts or you have an answer for me, please comment and let me know what you think. And this could be one of those common themes that I thread in podcasts in the future, because I think that's a pretty interesting thought. Obviously, Frank Herbert didn't nail down the balance between work and life, and I haven't nailed it down either. So, yeah, enlighten me. Let me know. Now on to the movie. From the outset, within the first minute and a half, I am going to rewatch this movie. I want to rewatch it tonight, honestly. But the way, what's his name? Denis Villeneuve. I might be mispronouncing his name. I think he's French-Canadian. He was giving me real Christopher Nolan producer vibes, in that the score was incredible. The music was always like very well placed. The expanse of these shots and how like beautiful they were. This was like probably the first time that I looked at a movie and watched a movie with a critical eye and really noticed and tried to drink in all the aspects of it so that I could provide a meaningful product to you guys. And I mean, just the shots are just awe-inspiring. That I can't imagine the budget on the CGI. There's a lot of things that are just incredible in the movie. I thought he did a really cool job using different elements of sound and how he chose his shots in making hard to grasp concepts within the book very believable, and being able to bring them to the visual realm and creating a product that was really solid. What I mean here is there's a power that the Bene Gesserit use and that Paul can use, and it's called the voice. And basically, when they drop their voice to a certain pitch, it's able to compel, coerce people into doing whatever they say. And they do that in a really cool way. Like the build up to the first time Paul uses it is really cool. Just drink that part in. It was an amazing scene. They do it with suspensor belts, which there's a particularly heavy character who needs the help against gravity because he's just so rotund. And suspensor belts also kind of help with combat operations where they're dropping down from high places and obviously don't suffer any damage. And they showed that really well in the movie. And then there's a third thing where they have these shields, these individual shields. And I thought the way they manifested that in the movie was also really good. Really solid way of doing it. Really loved that about it. And that was one of the first couple of things. Outside of the shots and the music, it was how he portrayed these hard to show. Like, it could have gone very wrong, and I think none of them went wrong at all. I thought they were all of them were really good. I haven't watched the Dune movie from about 20 years ago, but I've heard that it's bad. And I heard that they kind of fell off the tracks with the plot. I don't know if it was because it was going to be difficult to shoot some of the things that they were shooting or what, but I do know that this Dune, there are differences and there are some divergences. But they always come back to some very memorable and very specific quotes or occurrences that keep the movie feeling like it's true to the book. And I really like that about this movie, because it would start going down its own little path and you'd be like, oh, this is really good, but I hope they don't go too far off, and they'd bring you right back in. And it was like someone must have gone through and been like, okay, we've gone too far. Let's integrate this scene seamlessly where we bring in direct quotes or direct happenings from the book to bring those diehards, like I guess now me, back into the fold to support this movie. There's a lot of fight scenes, and there's one-on-one combat, and there's large-scale combat. And I think they do... I can only think of one scene where at some points the choreography was not great, and it's towards the end of the movie. It wasn't great initially, but then it's almost like they caught their flow halfway through, and it became really impressive. And in fact, I watched that scene over. So at first I was like, ooh, I don't know, this seems not even unrealistic, but just clunky, awkward, uncoordinated. But they kind of get it going, and the way they shoot these fight scenes are exciting. They're really exciting, and then it's combined with the music, which they did an excellent job of incorporating. And it's just the whole experience. This whole movie, I thought was amazing. The actors that they chose, oh man, so they changed one character's sex and color completely. Whatever, cool. I'm good with that, because that actress fulfilled that role perfectly. I thought she was great in her role, and she stayed true to the original character. I mean, when you recognize some of these characters, some of these actors, you're like, oh, this is a star-studded cast. I don't want to give anything away. You could look it up if you really want to. I didn't look anything up. I knew that Zendaya, and I recognized the face of the actor playing Paul Atreides, but I didn't look further into this. And then when the movie started revealing these characters, I was like, oh man, this is the perfect choice for this character type. And then there were somewhere like, gosh, I don't even want to go into this because the movie doesn't really. But there's these people called mentats, and they're basically human computers, and they serve as advisors to pretty much every leading man in royalty. And I think the mentat for Leto Atreides, the patriarch, was a little bit off, and they didn't really include him much, and then he kind of just disappeared out of the plot. So I'm hoping they kind of bring him back into the fold, because I know in the book they do. Spoiler alert. So, man, what the rating? Sorry, I get to the ratings in a second. They're important, but this I think is even more important. I'm going to make a bold statement. If they do this right and they continue on the path that they are with this Dune, I'm going to probably call it a trilogy, because the first movie covered 350 pages out of 900. If they do it as a trilogy, I think it'll be just as good as the original Star Wars. Yeah. So there's like these analysis tools on YouTube, where you can see where viewership drops depending on where in the video they're at. There will be a drop after this. So I'm going to mark 2750. I mean, it's going to be a little bit less after some editing. So somewhere around the 25-minute mark, I'm going to be looking for a drop, because I just said some wild shit. Ratings. Man, my first movie, and so I can't really compare it to much, but this might enter my top 10, so I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. The movie, 5 out of 5. I mean, it might enter my top 5. Because my top 5, Interstellar, Boondock Saints, Tombstone, Training Day, it might be Dune as number 5 behind those first 4. So if you like those first 4 films, and they're kind of different, how they're shot, rock and rolla, maybe top 6. Gentlemen, maybe top 7. I really like Guy Ritchie. All right, so I'm still going to give it a 5 out of 5. It's up there with the best of movies that I've seen. Love the way it was shot. For the book, I still don't think it's better than Early Riser. That's my best book that I've given. I think I gave that book a 4.2. If I'm just rating book 1 of this original Dune book, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Yeah. 4 out of 5. And with that, we're on to the bourbon. out of Limestone Branch Distillery Company in Lebanon, Kentucky. We've got Yellowstone Select, 93 proof. Like I mentioned earlier, not much higher than just the regular stock Basil Hayden. And I remember thinking for the Basil Hayden that it just lacked character. And I'm beginning to wonder if I know the proof doesn't equate to flavor, but I've also seen some strange parallels to the higher the proof, the more character there is. So I don't know, maybe I need to break out of that mold. If you've got a bourbon that breaks that mold, let me know. I'd love to get some more suggestions on bourbons to try. This is a labor of love. This whole thing is just a labor of love. Trying these bourbons that I know nothing about, just to expand my horizons. Reading these books that maybe I wouldn't typically read. I would probably have read Dune eventually, but this has been a really enjoyable experience. I say this pretty much every time, and I almost always edit it out. Maybe this time I won't. I do want to take this opportunity because he does this almost every podcast. And he's just very supportive of what I'm trying to do. We work together on a lot of things. We share some of the same software that helps us make a better product for you guys. So shout out to Six Pack Rant. I appreciate you, buddy. I love your content, man. I love when you have Caitlin on and you guys have your husband and wife moments, and I love when you bring your buddies on and y'all have been golfing or boating all day and you're sunburned and you've had too much and you just want to chat. You just want to sit and chat and then have others chat with you. So I appreciate you, man. Here's to you. First try of Yellowstone Select. Whoa. Ooh. Can y'all see flames? Ooh. Is caramel licorice a thing? If not, I found the liquid version of it. Liquid caramel licorice. Look how it just clings to the glass. I mean, you can't see it, but I sure can. What I need to start doing is I went to a bourbon tasting probably 2 years ago in Lexington. Actually, it was in Versailles, Kentucky. I know it's pronounced Versailles pretty much everywhere else, but in Kentucky, Versailles. We give those L's the recognition they deserve. So in Versailles, Kentucky, there's this, it's a castle, straight up. And in order to keep the castle going, to provide upkeep and the electricity required to run this thing, they run several different things out of it. It's a wedding venue, but there's also these bourbon tastings, and they set out walnuts, cranberries, mustard with some bread, or all these different types of things that you could prep yourself with a certain flavor that you could then seek in the bourbon, and it works. It sounds like some witchcraft or some wizardry. And it's in a castle. It's like Hogwarts. It's the alcoholics' Hogwarts. But it works. I'm telling you, it works. Trust me. Look me into my eyes. It works. So I wish I had that. I think I may start doing that. Maybe that's how I start introducing something into the fold here. Provide you guys with a service. I'm going to take a little sip, and I'm going to give you my rating. Caramel licorice, guys. The aftertaste is caramel licorice. I mean, the palate is caramel licorice, but it stays there. Oh. So I'm trying something. Like I mentioned just earlier, I'm trying to introduce a couple of different new things into the fold here. One of those things I'm working through, I think it's called Monterey Company. They do customization of different things. I'm trying to customize a beanie, and I want to get it out sometime in December. About in time for like the really cold, bitter months of January and February. It's going to have milk and bourbon on it, and underneath it, it's going to say, "Damn the man that can't do it." I designed the logo. It's what's on my YouTube right now. And additionally, I made these. So a bottle opener. I think it's always handy to have a couple of these interspersed throughout the house. I got a little small order of it initially. And I'm thinking about, and I've actually already just decided. Thank you to this bourbon for you guys. The goal here is not really to make this a lucrative podcast. If that were to happen, it's not going to be because I've preordained it. What I'm trying to do is get it out there, making some products that people can have, that can spark some conversation, and maybe open up my podcast to other people. It would benefit me. Hopefully it would benefit the viewer. And so I'm starting to try to do this. So really the intent here is just getting my name, the Milk and Bourbon name, out there. So what I'm going to do is, you name the price, kind viewer. And hopefully if you're family, you don't offer me $1, because that would be messed up. But you name the price. I've got a couple of these. Hit me up if you want one. I mean, they're solid. They're a really good make. I got them off Etsy. So if you want to support me and get my name out there and make this podcast better, not only through, getting better equipment, but also through having more people that could provide, meaningful feedback and meaningful discussion, I'd really appreciate that. So name your price. I think I've got 10 of these, maybe 12. I've got 12 of these. So name your price. First come, first serve. I'll ship it out to you. Send me a picture, I guess, is all I'd really ask for. But yeah, that marks episode 12 of Milk and Bourbon. Thank you for being a part of this. We're approaching a year almost of this. If you look at episode 1 and then look at this episode, I think you'll see a lot of differences in how it's structured, how it's shot, the quality of equipment, the quality of conversation, all that. So finishing it the same way though, since episode 1 with my grandfather's toast. Up to it, down to it, damn the man that can't do it. Thank y'all.